Hello and welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. What I'd like to talk about here today is the lousy job we've done in managing the coronavirus. Now, I know most of you know it's been a lousy job, so I'm not saying anything new when I say it's a lousy job. But what I want to do is to show how lousy a job it's been in the context of the performance of other nations in a cross-national context. Now, I've talked about this a few times already, but I don't think it's getting home to people. So today on Rising, Crystal pointed out that we've done a terrible job in managing the virus compared to other nations, that we're among the worst in the world. But that's all qualitative. That's qualitative. What does that mean in terms of what the bottom line is in managing the virus? Fatalities per million. What does it mean in terms of fatalities per million? You need to keep that in mind. You need to know that in order to understand, in order to get a gut understanding of how badly we've done. You need to know that. So I'm going to share the Worldometer site with you now. You should be seeing it now. I'm just getting a refresher on the page. So far today, this keeps count in real time. So far today, 2,277 new deaths here in the United States. It's only 344, folks. There are still 8 hours and change to go through of this day. A third of the day. We're going to hit 34, 35, 3,600 fatalities per day for this day. Our total death count is now above 315,000, according to the Worldometer site. 316,905, nearly 317,000. And deaths per million? 955. There are nations doing worse. There are the pocket nations, San Marino, for example, 1,590. There's Belgium, number 2 in the world at 1,574 per million, far worse than the United States. Italy, 1,113, also far worse, but not as bad as Belgium. There's Peru. They're awful at just 2 behind Belgium. There's Bosnia Herzegovina. They're worse than we are. And Slovenia, they're worse. North Macedonia is worse. Spain. There's the pocket nation, of Andorra. We don't need to count them. Then there's the UK. Right now, we're at 900. They're at 971 deaths per million. We're at 955 deaths per million, 16 behind them. But they've just about completed their day. It's 946 there. They're going to end the day most probably at something like 973 deaths per million. We might end our day at 959 per million, so we'll be about 12 fatalities per million behind the UK. About a week ago, we were 25 deaths per million behind the English. Now, we're probably going to end this day something like 12 behind them. In 1 week, we will have picked up 13 deaths per million. There are other nations that are having a bad time. Lots of nations are having a bad time. They are, and they continue to have a bad time. But there are other nations that have managed this well. It's important to note how many nations there are on this chart. I'm at 124 nations already, and I haven't reached the top performing nations yet. Going down the list, 127 nations. I'm going to arbitrarily start with Australia. They have 35 deaths per million. 35 to our, what was it? 955? 955. They're at 35. 35 deaths per million. Let's compare. Let's just ask the question. If we were like Australia, how many people would we have lost? Well, they have only 25 million people. We have 330 million people here. So what's that? Let's see. That's 4. That's 12. So we would have to multiply not their 35 deaths per million, but their total deaths of 900K and 8. We would have to multiply that by 35. So what's that? 9,000, 27,000. Let's round it off. They would have had 30,000 fatalities, something like that. How many fatalities do we have again? 317,000. I think my arithmetic is wrong there. It's even worse because they're not doing only 10 times better than we are. They're doing something like 30 times better than we are. But Australia is far from the best performing nation in the world. They are. Far from it. There's Japan at 22 deaths per million. There's South Korea. We haven't even reached South Korea yet. I don't believe. Let's find them. There they are. 157th worst in the world. 51 million people there. Lots of people in South Korea. Only 12 deaths per million. Well, the United States is about 7 times the size of South Korea. South Korea has total deaths of 634. If it was like we were like South Korea, we would have something like 4,200 deaths rather than 217,000. Would you trade that, people? What would have been worth to have had a president who managed things and a Congress who managed things sufficiently well that we would have had only 4,200 deaths from the virus? Nor is that near the best in the world. There's New Zealand with 5 deaths per million, 25 total deaths in the whole country, 25 total deaths. So if we were New Zealand, what would we have had? 1,200 deaths? We'd hardly notice. The economy wouldn't be shut down. What they just did in New Zealand was to declare the nation COVID-free, coronavirus-free. They just did that. Nor are they the best in the world. China claims only 3 deaths per million. Now, we, of course, say, oh, the Chinese are falsifying their data, and they got a lot more than 3 deaths per million. How much more do you really think they have? Are they off by a factor of 10? They have 30 deaths per million? They managed it far better than we. Far, far better than we. How about Thailand? 9/10 of a fatality. Not even 1 fatality per million. If we were like them, we would have had 270 fatalities in the whole country. Something on that order. Or Vietnam, 4/10 of a fatality per million. But you probably don't trust them because they're a communist country. Their statistics are off, right? 98 million people living it. Let's say they're cheating. They're off by 10. How would you like to have 4 deaths per million? Even less than New Zealand per million. And what about Taiwan? Now, you know we can trust their statistics. They developed their medical system based on ours. Their Medicare for All system based on ours. They have 24 million people in that country. Okay, so what is that? 1/12 of ours, something like that. They've had only 7 total deaths. If we were Taiwan, we'd have 100 deaths right now. 100 deaths. Not 317,000 deaths. 100 deaths. If you want to look at what poor management has cost us, lack of rigor in managing the virus, what it's cost us, folks, it's cost us 317,000 people. An order of magnitude of fatalities comparable to what we lost in the Second World War. In the 4 years of the Second World War. That's it for this progressive short take. You get the point. This is a failed state. It has failed us, failed the American people, killed 317,000 of us. A failure of the executive branch, a failure of Congress. It's a failure of both parties, especially the Republican Party, especially the Republican Party. It would have been better with the Democrats. But really, can you imagine it being better than Canada? I can't. I closed the Worldometer site. I'm not going to reopen it. But look at it once again and look at Canada. And you'll find they're not very good compared to Australia or Taiwan or Vietnam or South Korea. They're much, much worse. We needed to get serious. We needed to get good. We needed to control it. We needed to treat it like a war. We did not. And we paid. And we're continuing to pay today. And will continue to pay for months to come. Because we are a failed political system and a failed state. I'm ending now. Thank you for being here.